right, so we're diving into mastering English for public speaking. It's pretty cool how this guy just jumps right in and tackles the fear factor.
Yeah, it really does. It acknowledges that, anxiety is so common with public speaking. Did you know that studies actually show that more people fear public speaking than death? It's wild.
Really? That's kind of crazy. I mean, I get it, like the sweaty palms, the racing heart.
Exactly. But what's cool is this guide, it helps you reframe that. It helps you turn those nerves into energy.
Oh, I've heard that before, like turning that anxiety into excitement. But how do we actually do that? It's easier said than done, right? When you're actually staring out at a sea of faces.
Right. Well, one of the things that really stood out to me in the guide is just the importance of preparation. It dives into this idea of mental prep. Things like visualization,
Yeah.
vividly picturing yourself delivering a successful speech.
Wait, hold on. Are we talking full-on daydreaming here, like imagining the applause and the whole 9 yards?
Exactly. It sounds cheesy, but there's real science behind it. When you visualize success, you're kind of training your brain to believe it's possible. And that boosts your confidence in the process.
So it's like a mental rehearsal. Okay, yeah. I can see how that would help calm the pre-speech jitters. But what about the structure of the speech itself? Does the guide, offer any tips on how to organize our thoughts and all that?
Absolutely. It breaks down a speech into the classic, intro, body, conclusion. But what I found interesting is how much emphasis it puts on crafting and engaging opening.
Oh yeah, you gotta grab the audience's attention right from the start. But how do you do that? I always get so stumped when it comes to intros. It's like staring at a blank page hoping for inspiration.
Well, the guide offers some great strategies for that hook. One suggestion is starting with a surprising fact or statistic. Imagine opening with, "Did you know that more people fear public speaking than death?" Instant attention grabber, right?
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. That would definitely wake up the audience. But wouldn't that work better for some topics than others? What if I'm giving a presentation on, say, accounting software? That statistic might not be the most relevant.
You're right. And that's where tailoring your approach comes, and something this guide stresses throughout. Another hook it suggests is starting with a personal story. Even with accounting software, you could share a brief anecdote about a time you struggled with spreadsheets or something. Instantly makes it relatable.
Oh, I see your point. Yeah, everyone loves a good story. It's like suddenly I'm not just some random person talking about numbers. I'm a human being who's been there, felt the frustration.
Exactly. It creates that connection. And that's key for keeping your audience engaged. And, the guide actually goes deeper into storytelling techniques. It emphasizes this idea of a clear narrative arc, a beginning, middle, and end.
Like a mini movie playing out in their minds. But how do we make sure our story actually, drives home our point? Sometimes I worry about going off on tangents and losing the audience.
Yeah, and that's where the body of the speech comes in. This is where you expand on your key points using evidence, examples, all that to support your argument. The story just becomes a way to illustrate those points, make them more memorable.
So it's not just randomly sharing anecdotes, it's about weaving them into a cohesive structure. I like that. It's like the story becomes a thread that connects all the different parts of your speech.
Precisely. And the guide also suggests using metaphors and analogies. Yeah, and instead of just presenting dry facts, you can find those relatable comparisons that help the audience grasp your point.
Oh, I love a good analogy. It's like taking something abstract and just making it click for people. Do you have an example from the guide?
Yeah, there's a great one where it compares crafting a speech to building a house. The foundation is your core message, the walls are your supporting points, and then the roof is your conclusion.
I love that. It makes the whole process seem way less intimidating.
Okay, so we've hooked them with our killer intro, we've built a solid structure with our story and supporting points, and now it's time for the grand finale, the conclusion. What does the guide suggest for wrapping things up effectively?
Well, it suggests summarizing your main points, restating your thesis, really driving home that core message, and then ending with a strong closing statement that leaves a lasting impression.
Okay, like a call to action, maybe? Encourage the audience to do something with the information they just learned?
Exactly. Or a thought-provoking question, or even a powerful quote that reinforces your message. It's about ending on that high note, leaving them with something to ponder.
Okay. I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together, but so far we've mostly focused on the content of the speech. What about the actual language we use? Especially, for those of us speaking in English as a second language. I know I sometimes struggle to find the right words, especially when I'm under pressure. Right. Well, the guide offers some excellent advice on vocabulary. It really emphasizes learning those transition words to help your ideas flow smoothly. Words like moreover, however, in addition. Those words make your speech sound so much more polished and professional.
Okay, yeah. Those little words, they make such a big difference. It's like the glue that holds everything together. But what about making our language more persuasive? Sometimes I feel like I'm just stating facts, not really captivating the audience.
Right. Well, the guide has you covered there too. It suggests using language that appeals to both logic and emotion. Phrases like, it's clear that, or imagine if, can really make your arguments more compelling.
Ah, so it's not just about being informative, it's about connecting with the audience on an emotional level too.
Exactly. And remember, descriptive adjectives and adverbs can also make your speech more vivid and engaging. Instead of just saying a good idea, you could say a brilliant and innovative idea. Those descriptive words really paint a picture.
Right. It's like adding those extra brushstrokes to your masterpiece. But what if we're giving a speech on a really technical topic? Do we have to dumb it down for the audience?
Not at all. The guide acknowledges that, you might need to use some technical terms. The key is just to define them clearly. Make sure no one feels lost.
So it's about finding that balance between accuracy and accessibility. I like that. Speaking of accessibility, the guide also talks about pronunciation, which is a huge hurdle for, non-native English speakers like myself. Are there any quick tips for sounding more clear and confident?
Well, the guide stresses the importance of clear articulation, enunciating each word distinctly, no mumbling aloud. It also suggests practicing tongue twisters, which might sound silly, but it really helps with those tricky sounds.
Like the classic, she sells seashells by the seashore. I can already picture myself stumbling over that one. But seriously, does that actually help?
It really does. Tongue twisters force you to pay attention to those individual sounds and train your mouth to make those movements. It's all about building that muscle memory.
So it's like a workout for your tongue. I'm all for that. But what about the rhythm and intonation of English? Sometimes I feel like I sound so robotic, like I'm lacking that natural flow.
Yeah, I get that. The guide recommends mimicking native English speakers. Listen to podcasts, watch movies, pay attention to how they stress certain words and phrases, how their tone rises and falls. It's about absorbing those patterns through exposure.
That makes sense. It's like learning a new dance. You've got to watch and imitate before you can really make it your own. Are there any tech tools that can help with pronunciation? I'm always looking for ways to leverage technology.
Absolutely. Language learning apps, things like Duolingo or Babbel, they all offer pronunciation exercises. And there's online dictionaries with audio pronunciations. You can even use speech recognition software that'll give you feedback on your pronunciation in real time.
Wow. Technology is amazing. So many options to explore. This deep dive has already been packed with so many valuable insights. We've covered confidence building, speech structure, even some language tips, but there's still so much more to explore. I'm especially curious about the guide's emphasis on body language. That always seems so mysterious to me.
Yeah, body language is fascinating. It's like this secret language we all speak, often without even realizing it. And the guide really dives into how to master that language, specifically for public speaking. We'll unpack all of that after a quick break. It's funny, we often think about public speaking as this purely verbal skill, but the guide really highlights how much nonverbal communication comes into play.
Oh, you're talking about body language, right? Like posture, gestures, eye contact. I've heard all that matters, but I honestly get so focused on remembering my words that everything else kind of goes out the window.
Yeah, it's totally understandable. But think about it this way.
Yeah.
Even if you're delivering the most brilliant content, if your body language is screaming nervous wreck, it's not going to land. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's not just about what we say, it's how we say it, with our whole presence, right?
Exactly. And the guide kind of breaks down these key elements of body language, starting with gestures. It encourages using gestures purposefully to, emphasize points, but to also avoid overdoing it, becoming distracting.
Yeah, I've totally seen speakers who are all over the place with their hands. It's almost comical. How do you find that balance between expressive and, flailing?
Well, the guide suggests practicing your gestures beforehand, making sure they feel natural and flow with your words. It's almost like you're choreographing a dance. Each movement should have a purpose and enhance the performance.
So no jazz hands unless it's a presentation about musical theater.
Got it. But what about eye contact? I'm terrible at that. I always end up staring at the back wall or someone's forehead.
I hear you. Eye contact can feel intense, but the guide frames it as a way to Build rapport with the audience, make individuals feel seen. Instead of, scanning the room aimlessly, try focusing on one person for a few seconds and then shifting to another. So it's like having these mini conversations with different people throughout the speech. I kind of like that. It takes the pressure off of feeling like I'm addressing this huge crowd.
Exactly. It creates a sense of intimacy, a connection. It makes it more engaging for everyone. Now let's talk about posture. The guide's pretty clear about this one. Standing tall, shoulders back, feet grounded.
The classic power pose, huh? I can see how that projects confidence, but honestly, sometimes I just want to hunch over and hide when I'm nervous. Any tips for overcoming that instinct?
Well, the guide emphasizes that posture isn't just about appearances. It's about how you feel. Standing tall actually sends signals to your brain. It can boost your confidence and actually reduce anxiety.
Wait, so faking it until you make it actually has some scientific backing?
It really does. There's research showing that power poses can alter your hormone levels, which can make you feel more powerful and less stressed.
Okay, I am convinced. No more hunching. Now, what about facial expressions? Do we have to plaster on a smile the whole time, even if we're dying inside?
No. The guide stresses authenticity over these forced expressions. It's about matching your facial expressions to the tone of your speech, allowing your natural emotions to show through.
Oh, so it's okay if I'm sharing a serious story and my expression reflects that, rather than, forcing a grin.
Exactly. A genuine, heartfelt expression will always be more powerful. And speaking of genuineness, the guide has some interesting thoughts on how we use our voices.
Oh yeah, voice modulation. That's something I really struggle with. I tend to speak in a monotone, especially when I'm nervous. How do we inject more life into our delivery?
Well, the guide encourages us to think of our voice as an instrument. Just like a musician uses dynamics and variation, we can adjust our tone, our pitch, and pace to keep the audience engaged.
So instead of being a robot reading off a script, we become storytellers using our voice to, paint pictures and evoke emotions.
Precisely. The guide suggests varying your tone to emphasize certain words or phrases, creating a sense of urgency or excitement when needed.
So it's about being strategic with those highs and lows, right? Making sure our voice matches the message we're trying to convey.
Exactly. And, pauses can be just as powerful as words.
Really?
Yeah, they give the audience time to process information, and it allows you to regain your composure, if you need a moment.
Okay, so silence isn't the enemy. Sometimes I feel like I have to fill every second with words.
Not at all. A well-placed pause can create suspense, it can emphasize a key point, or just give you a chance to breathe and connect with your audience.
I like that. It's like giving those words room to breathe too. This is all fantastic advice, but let's be real. Even with the best preparation, nerves can still get to you mid-speech. What does the guide suggest for handling those in-the-moment freak-out moments?
The guide has some really practical tips for that. First, remember that deep breath we talked about earlier? That's your superpower in those moments. Pause, inhale deeply, and exhale slowly. It's like an instant reset button for your system.
Okay, that's easy enough to remember. What else? I'm all about having a mental toolkit for those panic attacks disguised as presentations.
Another tip is to just focus on a friendly face in the audience. Find someone who's smiling, nodding, genuinely engaged. It's an instant confidence booster.
Ah, so it's like having your own personal cheerleader in the crowd. I can see how that would help.
Exactly. And finally, the guide reminds us to just embrace imperfection. Everyone makes mistakes, even seasoned speakers. If you stumble over a word, you lose your train of thought, don't beat yourself up.
Easier said than done. I'm my own worst critic. But I guess those little slip-ups make us human, right? No one expects perfection.
Exactly. In fact, the audience might even find you more relatable if you acknowledge those imperfections with humor and grace.
Okay, I am starting to see the light. This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening. It's amazing how much goes into delivering a truly engaging and impactful speech.
It is. But it's also incredibly empowering to know that we have the tools and the techniques to overcome those fears and become more confident communicators. And, the guide doesn't stop there. It goes on to discuss some really interesting strategies for engaging the audience, like turning a presentation into this interactive experience.
Now that sounds exciting. Let's dive into those audience engagement tips right after we take a quick break.
All right, so we've talked about a lot, like conquering that stage fright, how to structure a good speech, even mastering body language and voice modulation. But now I really want to get into this idea of audience engagement. Like, how do we go beyond just delivering information and actually make it an experience for the people listening?
The guide's got tons of strategies for that, and it all starts with understanding your audience. It really emphasizes this idea of tailoring your approach to their specific needs and interests. It's like the difference between throwing a generic party and, planning a custom celebration that's really tailored to that guest of honor. I love that analogy. So it's more than just knowing, like, their age range or profession. It's about understanding, like, why are they there? What do they hope to get out of this presentation?
Exactly. Like, imagine you're giving a presentation on sustainable living, right? If you're speaking to a group of environmental activists, you can dive right in, get into those nitty-gritty details. You can use all those technical terms. They're probably already familiar with them.
But if you're presenting to, like, a group of families with young children, you might want to focus on those simple, practical tips, things they can actually do at home. Maybe even frame it as, like, a fun challenge or an adventure.
Exactly. And the guide really stresses that adaptation doesn't mean dumbing down your message. It just means finding that most effective way to connect with that specific group of people.
It's like you're speaking their language, both literally and figuratively. Now, one of the engagement techniques that really stood out to me was asking questions. It seems so simple, but how does that actually transform a presentation?
Well, questions are super powerful because they invite the audience to actually participate. To think critically about the topic, maybe even challenge some of your assumptions. It's no longer just a one-way street. You're creating a dialogue. You're kind of on this shared journey together.
So it's less about being the expert with all the answers. It's more about fostering that sense of curiosity and, like, co-creation.
Exactly. You become more of a facilitator. You're guiding them to discover insights and connections they might not have made on their own. And, sometimes those questions from the audience can lead to these unexpected tangents that just enrich the entire experience.
Oh, I love those moments of spontaneous discovery. But not all questions are created equal, right? Are there specific types of questions that are more effective for engaging an audience?
Yeah, the guide suggests asking those open-ended questions that encourage deeper thinking, rather than those simple yes or no responses. For example, instead of asking, "Do you understand?" You could ask, "What are your thoughts on this?" Or, "How might this apply to your own work?"
Okay, yeah. Those open-ended questions really open up the conversation and make people feel like their perspectives are valued. Now, another engagement technique that the guide highlights is the use of visuals. I'm a very visual person, so I definitely get the appeal, but how do we use them strategically without, like, becoming overly reliant on them?
Right. Well, visuals should always complement and enhance your message, not replace it. The guide suggests using them to illustrate complex concepts, break up text-heavy slides, or just evoke emotional responses. Imagine you're giving a presentation on climate change, right? Instead of just listing a bunch of statistics, you can show a powerful image of a melting glacier. That visual impact can be really powerful.
It's like the saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. But with visuals, it's important to choose them carefully, right? We don't want to distract from the message or come across as, like, cheesy or unprofessional.
Absolutely. The guide emphasizes using high-quality visuals that are relevant and appropriate for your audience. And, visuals don't have to be limited to just slides or images. You can incorporate props, demonstrations, even interactive elements like polls or quizzes. Get people moving and thinking.
Oh, I love those interactive elements. It's like turning a presentation into a game makes it more fun and memorable. Now, before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more powerful engagement technique that we've already kind of talked about, and that's storytelling. How does storytelling specifically enhance audience engagement?
Stories are just inherently engaging because they tap into our emotions, our imaginations, our shared human experiences. When you tell a story, you invite the audience to step into your world, to feel what you felt, see the world through your eyes. It creates this connection that goes way beyond facts and figures.
It's like you're weaving a spell, drawing them into your narrative and making them feel like they're a part of something bigger.
Exactly. And the guide reminds us that everyone has a story to tell. Those personal anecdotes, those moments of vulnerability, those tales of triumph or failure, they're what make us human. And that's what makes our messages resonate.
So as we prepare for our next presentation, it's not just about crafting the perfect slides or memorizing our talking points. It's about finding that story, that emotional thread that will really connect us with our audience.
Precisely. It's about embracing that power of storytelling. to inform, to inspire, and to create a truly transformative experience.
This has been an incredible deep dive into mastering English for public speaking. I feel like we've explored every little corner of it, from conquering those initial fears to, crafting engaging content and really mastering the delivery. But one thing that keeps coming back to me is this idea of authenticity. It seems like no matter what techniques we use, the most important thing is to be ourselves and to let our passion for our topic shine through.
I completely agree. All these tips and tricks are meaningless if they don't have that, if they're not infused with your unique personality and your perspective. The guide reminds us that the most effective speakers are the ones who are genuine, relatable, and truly passionate about their message.
So as you step onto that stage, remember to breathe, connect with your audience, tell your story, and most importantly, be yourself.
And have fun. Public speaking is a privilege. It's a chance to share your ideas and make a difference in the world. Embrace that opportunity and let your voice be heard.
This deep dive has been amazing. We hope you've gotten a lot out of it and you're feeling inspired to take your communication skills to that next level.
It's been a pleasure. Until next time, happy speaking.